The chamber was larger than any cathedral ever built on Earth. It stretched upward for nearly a mile, carved from black stone that seemed to swallow light itself. Floating platforms held thousands of alien beings, each one representing a different species from across the galaxy. The air hummed with translation frequencies, converting countless languages into something every creature could understand. Ambassador James Walker stood alone at the center of it all. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes, wearing the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Around him, creatures of nightmare and wonder watched from their elevated seats. There were beings made of living crystal, their bodies catching the dim light and scattering rainbows across the walls. There were insectoid warriors with razor-sharp mandibles and compound eyes that tracked his every movement. There were ancient reptilian lords draped in ceremonial robes, their scales shimmering with patterns that changed as they breathed. 3,000 species. 3,000 civilizations. All of them united under a single government that had ruled the galaxy for 80,000 years. And all of them were staring at one. Human. James kept his hands clasped behind his back. His heartbeat was steady. His breathing was calm. He had spent 40 years preparing for this moment, even though he had hoped it would never come. Above him, projected across the domed ceiling like a museum exhibit, a holographic image of Earth rotated slowly. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds, home to 8 billion people who had no idea their fate was being decided in this chamber. High Chancellor Vorath rose from his throne at the apex of the chamber. He was a reptilian being, 9 feet tall, with golden scales and eyes that burned like dying stars. His voice echoed through the vast space, amplified and translated simultaneously. Species designation 7442. Classification: Humanity. Homeworld: Earth, Sol System, Outer Rim Territories. He paused, letting the weight of 3,000 gazes press down upon the single human. You have been observed for 200 of your years. Your technological development has been catalogued. Your expansion into nearby star systems has been noted. The Galactic Council has determined that humanity has reached the threshold of recognized civilization. James tilted his head slightly. We are honored by the Council's recognition. A ripple of amusement passed through the assembled species. Several made sounds that their biology used for laughter. The human was polite. They always were, at first. As a recognized civilization, Vorath continued, humanity is now subject to the tributary accords. These are the terms of your membership in galactic society. James remained silent, waiting. 30% of your mineral output will be transferred to Council distribution centers. 20% of your agricultural production will be allocated to feeding Council military forces. And 10% of your population will be redistributed as labor across Council space. The chamber was quiet. Every species remembered the first time they heard these demands. The shock, the disbelief, the slow realization that the galaxy was not a place of equals. Failure to comply, Vorath said, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble, will result in enforcement action. James nodded slowly, as if considering the terms. High Chancellor, I must ask for clarification. What exactly does enforcement action involve? Military Commander Threll, a massive insectoid from the Kesari Empire, clicked his mandibles together in what passed for a smile among his kind. Enforcement action means the complete destruction of your species. Your worlds will be burned. Your population will be eliminated. Your history will be erased from the galactic record. He leaned forward, his compound eyes gleaming. The Kesari have enforced such actions 12 times. 12 species who thought they could resist. 12 species who no longer exist. Do not make the same mistake, human. James was quiet for a long moment. The chamber watched him, expecting the usual response: pleading, bargaining, desperate attempts and negotiation. Every species went through the same stages when they first faced the Council. But Ambassador Walker did something unexpected. He smiled. "High Chancellor, I appreciate the Council's patience in explaining these terms. I must contact my government for instructions. This will require approximately 48 hours. Vorith waved a clawed hand. "Granted. But understand this, human. There is no outcome in which Earth does not comply. The mathematics of power are absolute. You have 47 ships. The Council commands millions. There is nothing you can do." James bowed his head respectfully. "Of course, High Chancellor. The mathematics are clear." He turned to leave, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. But before he reached the door, he paused and spoke without looking back. "Though I should mention that humans have a particular fondness for mathematics. We invented something called exponential functions. Perhaps the Council has encountered them." He walked out of the chamber before anyone could respond. Observer Phoenix, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell, activated his recording device. His species, the Watchers, had documented 10,000 years of galactic history. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had witnessed the extinction of hundreds of other species. Something in the human ambassador's eyes had made Phoenix very interested in the next 48 hours. The diplomatic vessel Horizon carried James back toward the transit gate that would take him home. Inside the ship's secure communication room, he activated an encrypted channel that connected directly to Earth's strategic command center beneath the Swiss Alps. Secretary General Maria Santos appeared on the screen, her face grave. Behind her, James could see the war room filled with military officers and government officials. "They gave us the standard demands," James reported. 30-20-10. "We have 48 hours to respond." General Robert Cross, commander of Earth's Defense Forces, leaned into view. "Timeline confirmed. Admiral Webb reports the fleet is ready." Maria's eyes were steady. "Then we proceed with Option Omega. Admiral, what's our current status?" A new face appeared on the screen. Admiral Thomas Webb was a weathered man with cold blue eyes and a reputation for achieving the impossible. He had been preparing for this day for 30 years. "The Council believes we have 47 ships," Webb said. "As of this morning, we have 47,000. All armed, all ready, all waiting for the order." James felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The pretense was almost over. For 3 decades, humanity had shown the galaxy exactly what they wanted to see. A young species, primitive technology, easy prey, but the truth was very different. "What about Project Terminus?" Maria asked quietly. Webb's expression didn't change. "The device is operational. Dr. Elena Vasquez completed final testing last week. If the Council forces our hand, we can respond with total annihilation." Maria closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they held a resolve that had been forged through years of secret preparation. "Then we wait. 48 hours. And we hope they choose wisely." Far across the galaxy, at the edge of Council space, 1,800 warships of the Kessari Third Fleet began moving toward human territory. Commander Thrall had ordered them to position near Earth's border as a reminder of what awaited any species foolish enough to resist. But as the fleet traveled through the darkness between stars, a young sensor technician noticed something strange. For just a moment, his instruments detected a massive energy signature. Something huge. Something hidden in the void. He ran a diagnostic. Nothing appeared on his screens. He shrugged and dismissed it as a malfunction. Outside the Kessari fleet, invisible to their sensors, shapes moved in the darkness. Shadows passing over stars. One by one, then dozens, then hundreds. Something vast was waiting. And humanity was done pretending to be weak. 47 hours had passed since humanity received the Council's demands. The great chamber on Nexus Prime filled once again with representatives from 3,000 species, all expecting to witness the familiar scene of a young civilization. Accepting its place in the Galactic Order. Ambassador James Walker walked to the central platform for the second time. But this time, he was not alone. Admiral Thomas Webb accompanied him, wearing the deep blue dress uniform of Earth's combined fleet. His chest bore no medals. The operations he had commanded were too classified for recognition. High Chancellor Vorath spoke first. Ambassador Walker, has Earth prepared its tribute schedule? James let the silence stretch for a moment. Every alien eye watched him with the bored familiarity of those who had witnessed this scene countless times before. High Chancellor, the United Earth Coalition has reviewed your demands with great care. We appreciate the Galactic Council's patience during our deliberations. He produced a small device from his pocket. However, I am afraid we must decline. The chamber erupted. Screams, roars, and sounds of alien outrage filled the air. Military Commander Thrall surged to his feet, his mandibles clacking with fury. You dare refuse? My fleet is already positioned at your border. I will personally oversee the extinction of your pathetic species. Admiral Webb spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. Commander Thrall, I am afraid your third fleet is no longer at our border. Thrall's compound eyes narrowed. What are you saying, human? I am saying that as of 19 minutes ago, your third fleet no longer exists. Chaos. Absolute chaos. Thrall scrambled to contact his commanders. Other representatives activated communication devices, trying to verify what the human had said. Vorath demanded order, but his voice was lost in the pandemonium. Then Thrall went still. His compound eyes lost focus as the reports came through. 1,800 vessels, he whispered. All of them gone. No distress signals, no debris, no survivors. They simply vanished. He turned to Admiral Webb, and for the first time in his 200-year military career, he felt something he did not recognize. Fear. Webb requested permission to address the Council directly. Vorath, shaken but trying to maintain authority, granted it. The Admiral walked to the holographic projector in the center of the chamber. With a gesture, he replaced the image of Earth with a tactical display. The Galactic Council operates on certain assumptions, he began. You assume that superior numbers guarantee victory. You assume that younger species must be weaker. You assume that the technology you have seen from humanity represents our true capabilities. He paused, meeting the eyes of various representatives. All of these assumptions are incorrect. He activated a recording. The footage showed the Kasari Third Fleet from an external perspective. The alien vessels appeared intact, traveling in standard formation. Then, without warning, they simply stopped, every ship. Simultaneously, their power cores collapsed inward, crushing each vessel into a sphere no larger than a marble. Gravitational collapse weaponry, Webb explained. We call them hammer rounds. Each projectile generates a localized singularity with a 1-kilometer radius. We have 7 million of them in production. The chamber had gone utterly silent. But that is not what concerns you most, Webb continued. You are wondering how we delivered these weapons. You had the Kesari fleet under observation. You saw nothing approach. He pulled up another image, showing the space where the fleet was destroyed. Then he adjusted the sensor frequencies. Ships appeared. Human ships. Not 47 of them. Thousands. They had been there all along, hidden in ways the Council's sensors could not detect. Humanity has spent the last 30 years preparing for this day, Webb said. Every demonstration of our technology was carefully managed. We showed you what we wanted you to see. A small fleet, modest weapons, limited range. He gestured, and the true scale of Earth's forces appeared. Networks of shipyards hidden in asteroid fields. Production facilities inside gas giants. Weapons platforms scattered across human space like a web of silent death. We have 47,000 combat vessels. Another 12,000 under construction. We can produce 300 more per month. High Chancellor Vorath attempted to regain control. This is a bluff, an elaborate deception. No species advances this quickly. Ambassador Walker stepped forward. Humanity is different, High Chancellor. We went from the first powered flight to landing on our moon in 66 years. From the first atomic weapon to bombs capable of destroying cities in less than a decade. When we perceive a threat, we respond with overwhelming force. He let that sink in before continuing. 30 years ago, when your observation probes first detected our radio signals, you made a choice. You decided we were prey. You began planning. How to exploit us, enslave us, strip our world of resources. His voice hardened. We intercepted those communications. We decoded your language. We studied your history, your military, your weaknesses, and we prepared. Observer Phoenix recorded everything, his crystalline body pulsing with activity. In 10,000 years of watching galactic events unfold, he had never witnessed anything like this. Vorath looked to Arbiter Meles for support. The crystalline being served as the Council's judicial authority, coldly logical and absolutely impartial. Arbiter, the Accords. These humans must be brought to compliance. Meles was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice rang like struck glass. The tributary accords contain provisions for species that exceed certain technological thresholds. If the humans possess the capabilities they claim, then by the Council's own laws, they are no longer a tributary species. They are a primary power. You would reward their aggression? Vorath hissed. I am merely stating the law, Chancellor. The law that this Council created. The session dissolved into shouting and arguments. Several military species demanded immediate retaliation against Earth. Others counseled caution. No one could agree on anything except that the situation was unprecedented. In the midst of the chaos, Admiral Webb received a communication on his personal device. He read it, and his expression hardened. He whispered to Ambassador Walker. The collective of 30 has authorized a preemptive strike. 12,000 ships from 8 species, led by the Kasare and the Morgoth Empire. They are mobilizing now. Walker's face remained composed. Can we stop them? Webb looked at him, and there was something almost sad in his eyes. Stopping them is not the problem. The problem is what happens after. If they force our hand, there will be no negotiation. No treaty. Only annihilation. How long do we have? 6 hours until their fleet enters weapons range of Earth. General Cross is awaiting orders. Walker turned back to the chaos of the council chamber. Vorath was screaming at representatives. Threll had already left to join the strike fleet. No one was listening to reason. Then we have 6 hours to prevent a galactic extinction event, Walker said quietly. Webb nodded grimly. The question is whose extinction? Far away, in orbit around Earth, the defensive perimeter became visible as cloaking fields dropped. Thousands of ships. Weapons platforms, orbital fortresses. A wall of steel and fire surrounding humanity's homeworld. And beyond that perimeter, hidden in the deepest vaults beneath the planet's surface, something else waited. Something even the fleet commanders did not speak about openly. Project Terminus, the last option, the weapon that could end everything. The collective strike fleet assembled in the darkness between stars. 12,000 warships from 8 species, united by fear and hatred. Commander Threll watched from the bridge of his new flagship, the inevitable, a dreadnought 3 kilometers, long and bristling with weapons that had burned 100 worlds. Beside him stood Lord Curvath of the Morgoth Empire, a towering figure clad in ceremonial bone armor. The Morgoth had conquered 900 worlds across 50,000 years. They did not know defeat. They did not accept surrender. The human fleet numbers in the thousands, Curvath rumbled. But our combined forces will be sufficient. We strike their homeworld, eliminate their government, and the threat ends. Threll's mandibles clicked nervously. He had watched the recording of the Third Fleet's destruction 100 times. 1,800 ships erased in seconds. But admitting fear would be political suicide. Agreed. We attack in 4 hours. Once Earth falls, their colonies will surrender. On Earth, General Robert Cross stood in the Strategic Command Center beneath the Swiss Alps. His staff monitored the approaching fleet on holographic displays. Casualty projections scrolled across screens in glowing red numbers. Secretary General Maria Santos appeared via secure transmission, her face grave. "General, what are our options?" Cross studied the tactical data. "Conventional engagement favors us, Madam Secretary. Their fleet is larger, but our weapons are superior. Estimated enemy losses are 94%. Our losses would be 12 to 18%. That is thousands of our people." "Yes, ma'am." Cross paused. "However, if you authorize the deployment of Project Terminus, enemy losses become 100%. Our losses become 0. Maria was quiet for a long moment. "And collateral damage?" Cross pulled up a secondary display. "Terminus does not discriminate. It destroys everything within the target zone. If we activate it near Earth, we risk affecting the Moon. If we deploy it to intercept the fleet in deep space, the gravitational shockwave will destabilize 3 nearby star systems." "Uninhabited systems?" "Yes, but the effect will be visible across the galaxy. Every species with a telescope will see what we did." Maria rubbed her temples. "A warning, or a declaration, ma'am. Once the Council sees what Terminus can do, there are only 2 possible outcomes. They submit completely, or they commit everything they have to destroying us. And if they commit everything," Cross's eyes were cold, "then we activate Terminus on a larger scale. Admiral Webb has calculated the mathematics. Full deployment would require 700 simultaneous activations across Council space." He paused. "Estimated casualties would be 900 trillion sentient beings. 97% of known civilization." Maria stared at him. "You are describing genocide. I am describing survival, ma'am. They have given us no other choice." On a colony world called New Helsinki, a family gathered around their screen to watch the news reports. The father, a veteran of Earth's early expansion wars, tried to explain to his young daughter what was happening. "Why do they want to hurt us, Papa?" He knelt beside her, searching for words that could make sense of something senseless. "Because they are afraid of us, little one. They have been the strongest for a very long time. And when someone new comes along who might be as strong as them, it scares them. But we did not do anything wrong. No, we did not. But sometimes that does not matter to people who are afraid." She looked up at him with innocent eyes. "Will we be okay?" He hugged her tightly, wishing he could promise her safety. Wishing he could tell her that. "Everything would be fine. We will fight for you," he whispered. "No matter what happens, we will fight for you." On a warship preparing for battle, Lieutenant Marcus Bell wrote a letter to his parents. He was 26 years old, fresh from the academy, about to face combat for the first time. His hands shook as he typed. "I do not know if I will survive what is coming, but I want you to know that I am not afraid. I am proud to be human, proud to stand with the others who are willing to die so that Earth can live. Whatever happens, remember that your son did his duty." He saved the letter and set it to send automatically if his life signs flatlined. Then he went to his battle station in the council chamber on Nexus Prime. Ambassador Walker addressed the few representatives who had not fled to join the strike fleet or hide in their embassies. "You call us aggressive," he said. "You are right. Humanity is aggressive. We climbed out of caves by sharpening rocks and hunting creatures 10 times our size. When we could not outrun predators, we learned to make them fear us instead." He looked around the nearly empty chamber. "But we are also capable of extraordinary compassion, sacrifice, love. We do not want this war. We have spent 30 years hoping we would never have to fight it." Observer Phoenix approached him after the session. The Watcher's crystalline form pulsed with soft light. "You could win this war," Phoenix said. "I have observed enough conflicts to recognize the mathematics. Your weapons are superior. Your strategy is sound. So why have you not already struck?" Walker looked at him with tired eyes. "Because some of us still believe there is another way. Because the moment we become what they fear, we lose something we can never get back." "And if there is no other way?" Walker did not answer. He did not need to. Deep beneath Earth's surface, in a vault that appeared on no map, Dr. Elena Vasquez ran final diagnostics on the Terminus device. It looked deceptively simple. A sphere of dark metal, 2 meters in diameter, covered in equations that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. The culmination of 30 years of secret research. Thousands of scientists working in complete isolation. The most dangerous weapon humanity had ever created. Admiral Webb arrived via secure elevator, his face grim. "Doctor, status report. The core is stable. Dimensional anchors are locked. We are ready for deployment." Webb stared at the sphere. "If I give the order, there is no taking it back. The universe will never be the same. I know, Admiral. Are you certain it'll work?" Vasquez looked at the device that had consumed her entire career. Her life's work, designed to end lives on an unimaginable scale. "It will work. The only question is whether we can live with the consequences." Webb closed his eyes. "Open them. Transfer the device to the Prometheus. We deploy in 3 hours." The U.E.'s Prometheus was a small ship, barely armed, unremarkable in every way. But as it lifted off from Earth and joined the defensive fleet, every captain in the Armada knew what it carried. They formed a protective sphere around the little vessel. 40,000 warships guarding a single weapon, and across the void, the collective fleet approached. 12,000 ships, 8 species, the combined military might of civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. They expected an easy victory. They were wrong. On the bridge of the inevitable, Threll's sensor officer reported something strange. Energy readings from the center of the human formation were off the scale. Something was powering up. "What is that?" Curvath demanded. No one had an answer. Outside the ships, in the darkness between fleets, reality itself began to ripple. Space twisted. Light bent in impossible directions. The Prometheus was glowing. And somewhere in the back of his ancient mind, High Chancellor Vorath remembered legends he had dismissed as myths. Stories of a weapon that had ended the civilization that came before. A weapon that could unmake reality itself. "No," he whispered, watching the live feed from his throne room. "It is impossible. They could not have found it. But they had. And now the galaxy would learn why humanity was never meant to be prey. 100 years ago, deep beneath the Sahara Desert, an archaeological team uncovered something that should not exist. A chamber, perfectly preserved, millions of years old. Inside the chamber were the remains of a civilization that had existed on Earth long before humanity, before dinosaurs, before complex life of any kind. A species that had risen to interstellar dominance and then vanished without a trace. The archaeologists called them the precursors, and they had left behind instructions. For decades, humanity decoded the precursor archives in absolute secrecy. They learned the truth about the galaxy, the cycle that repeated every few million years, the Council's true nature, and the weapon that could break the cycle forever. The precursors had built Terminus as a gift to whatever species came next, not just for survival, but for freedom. Now, as two fleets faced each other across the void, that gift was about to be revealed. Admiral Webb opened a channel to the collective fleet on all frequencies. His image appeared on every screen, every display, every neural interface in the strike force. This is Admiral Thomas Webb of the United Earth Coalition. You have entered human-controlled space with hostile intent. I am offering you one opportunity to withdraw. Commander Threll responded with contempt. Human, you are outnumbered. Your threats are meaningless. Surrender now, and some of your species may be permitted to survive as laborers. I see. Then let me explain what is about to happen. Webb's voice remained calm, almost conversational. The device at the center of our formation is called Terminus. It was designed by a species that existed on Earth long before us. They created it to end wars, permanently. Lord Curvath laughed, his bone armor rattling with amusement. Impossible. Such a weapon would destroy the wielder as well. The precursors solved that problem. The field is precisely targeted. We can expand it to cover a region of space or contract it to affect a single target. At maximum range, it can reach across light years. Webb paused. Your entire fleet is currently within range. So is Nexus Prime. So is every council world in the galaxy. On Nexus Prime, High Chancellor Vorth watched in horror as Webb continued. The Galactic Council has ruled this galaxy for 80,000 years. In that time, you have crushed over 400 species, enslaved billions, demanded tribute from any civilization too weak to resist. Webb's image flickered, replaced by a holographic reconstruction of a precursor. The being was elegant, almost beautiful, with a form that suggested both wisdom and sorrow. You did the same to the precursors. They were your first tributary species. When they grew too powerful, you tried to destroy them. They built Terminus in response. The image changed again, showing an ancient battle. Council fleets against precursor defenses. They chose extinction over submission. They activated Terminus at maximum yield and erased themselves along with your entire military. You have spent 80,000 years rebuilding, burying the truth, pretending it never happened. Voreth was shaking. The secret that the Council's founding species had sworn to protect was being broadcast across the galaxy. The precursors seeded Earth with the key to their technology, Webb continued. They knew another species would eventually rise. They left us a choice. He straightened in his command chair. We can end this war right now. One activation, and your fleet ceases to exist. A few more, and the Council itself becomes nothing but a memory. Ambassador Walker contacted Webb on a private channel. Admiral, the Council is in complete chaos. Voreth is trying to order a full retreat, but Threll and Curvath are refusing. They do not believe you will actually do it. Then we need to convince them. On the collective flagship, Threll made his decision. All ships, attack formation. They are bluffing. No species would destroy itself to win a war. He never finished giving the order. Admiral Webb spoke a single word into his communicator. Demonstrate. On the Prometheus, Dr. Elena Vasquez activated Terminus at minimal yield. The effect was instantaneous. A sphere of absolute darkness appeared in front of the collective fleet. A hole in space where light itself ceased to exist. The ships closest to the edge were pulled toward it, their hulls stretching, like soft clay before disintegrating into particles smaller Then Adams.40-7 vessels vanished in 3 seconds. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the darkness folded in on itself and disappeared. "That was 1% power," Webb said into the silence. "Do I have your attention now?" Thrall and Curvath stared at the void where their forward elements had been. The collective fleet was in disarray. Several ships were already breaking formation to flee. On Nexus Prime, Morith made an emergency broadcast. "All collective forces, stand down immediately. This is a direct order from the High Chancellor. Stand down." But Lord Curvath had other ideas. His species did not retreat, had never retreated. The Morgoth had built their empire on the bones of races who thought they could frighten them into submission. "The Morgoth do not bow to threats," he growled. "All Morgoth vessels, charge weapons. Target the human command ship. Attack." 500 Morgoth dreadnoughts broke from the collective formation and accelerated toward the Resolution. Admiral Webb watched them come. "Ambassador, I need you to get word to the Council. What happens next is not what I want, but I will not let Earth die to preserve their pride. Admiral, please, there must be another way." "There is no other way. The Morgoth have chosen death over surrender. Now they will receive what they asked for." He opened a channel to the Prometheus. "Dr. Vasquez, target the Morgoth formation. Full activation." Her voice came back, strained with emotion. "Admiral, that is 500 ships, 80,000 sentient beings. I know. And they are charging at us regardless. Sometimes there is no good choice. Only the least terrible one." Webb looked at the approaching fleet. Proud warriors who would rather die than yield. He understood them, in a way. He would have made the same choice in their position, but he could not let them reach Earth. "Fire," he said. On the Prometheus, Elena Vasquez closed her eyes and pressed the activation sequence. Light bloomed in the void, not the darkness of before, but something worse. Pure white light that seemed to burn through the fabric of reality itself. It expanded, outward in a perfect sphere, engulfing the Morgoth formation. When it faded, there was nothing left. No ships, no debris, no bodies. 80,000 Morgoth warriors. The pride of an empire that had never known defeat simply ceased to exist. The surviving collective fleet did not move, did not speak. Every being aboard, every ship had watched the same thing happen. Thrall's mandibles hung open. In 2 centuries of military service, he had never imagined such total destruction. Lord Curvath, watching from the inevitable where he had remained to coordinate the attack, stared at his tactical display. The Morgoth. Concepts for defeat, surrender, and retreat had no direct translations in his language. Until now, his people had never needed them. Admiral Webb's voice cut through the silence like a blade. The Morgoth Empire made its choice. Now the rest of you will make yours. The screen on every ship displayed the same message. Surrender or share their fate. One by one, the ships of the collective fleet powered down their weapons and came to a stop. Thrall was the last to give the order, his pride warring with his survival instinct until the final moment. But even he knew when he was beaten, the battle was over. And now humanity would dictate the terms of the peace. The Galactic Council Chamber had never been so silent. 3,000 species sat in their elevated seats, watching the holographic transmission from the human fleet. The space where 500 Morgoth dreadnoughts had flown was empty. Not debris, not wreckage. Nothing at all. 80,000 warriors, erased from existence in the span of a heartbeat. High Chancellor Vorith stood at his podium, his golden scales pale with shock. For the first time in his 3,000-year life, he had no idea what to do. Ambassador Walker's image appeared above the central platform, projected for every representative to see. Council members, I urge you to listen carefully. His voice carried the calm authority of someone who knew exactly how much power stood behind his words. Humanity did not want this war. We spent 30 years preparing for it, while hoping we would never have to fight. We offered the Council every opportunity to treat us as equals. You responded with demands, threats, and finally military force. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the chamber. That option is no longer available to you. Secretary General Maria Santos took over the transmission, her image replacing Walker's. Here are humanity's terms for ending this conflict. They are not negotiable. She read from a prepared document. First, the tributary accords are abolished immediately. No species will be required to pay tribute to the Council ever again. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The accords had existed for 80,000 years. They were the foundation of galactic civilization. Second, all Council military forces will be reduced to defensive levels only. Specific numbers will be determined by mutual agreement with human oversight. Several military representatives started to protest, but Vorath silenced them with a gesture. He understood the mathematics now. Third, the Council will formally acknowledge humanity as a peer power with full voting, rights and veto authority over any military action. Maria's expression hardened. Fourth, the individuals responsible for ordering the attack on Earth will face trial for crimes against civilization. This includes High Chancellor Vorath and Commander Threll. Vorath went pale. Threll, still aboard his flagship, stopped breathing. Fifth and finally, the Council will publicly release all records related to the precursor civilization. Every species in the galaxy deserves to know the truth about how the Council came to power and what was done to achieve it. Maria folded the document. You have 1 hour to accept these terms. There will be no extensions. There will be no negotiations. Failure to comply will result in the systematic destruction of every Council world, beginning with Nexus Prime. She met the holographic gaze of High Chancellor Vorath. Choose wisely. Throughout the galaxy, the broadcast played on every frequency. Trillions of beings watched as humanity delivered an ultimatum to their masters. On tributary worlds, populations celebrated in the streets. Species that had been crushed under the Council's heel for millennia saw something they had never believed possible. Hope. On Council worlds, the mood was darker. Military commanders argued for resistance. Politicians demanded a coordinated strike. But the mathematics were clear. Terminus could reach them anywhere. There was no defense against a weapon that simply erased matter from existence. High Chancellor Vorath retreated to his private chambers. He was ancient, one of the oldest beings in the galaxy. He remembered the legends, the warnings passed down through generations. The precursors had left a message before they died, carved into the walls of their last stronghold. We give our children the fire. May they burn brighter than we did. Vorath finally understood. The precursors had not lost. They had simply passed the torch dot with 15 minutes remaining. Vorath returned to the Council chamber. The representatives had been arguing in circles, unable to reach consensus. He raised his staff, and the chamber fell silent. I have served this Council for 1800 years, he began. I watched our civilization expand across the galaxy. I believed we had achieved perfection, a system that would endure forever. He looked around at the assembled species. I was wrong. He pulled up the human terms on the central display. The humans have offered us something we never offered our tributaries. A choice. We can accept their terms and survive, or we can resist and be destroyed. Commander Threll's image appeared via transmission from his flagship. We cannot surrender to these primitives. We are the Council. We are nothing, Vorath interrupted. We built our empire on lies. We convinced ourselves that we had the right to rule. But the truth is simpler. He met Threll's compound eyes. We were lucky. We found a wounded civilization and struck while it was weak. We have spent 80,000 years making sure no one could do the same to us. That luck has run out." He turned to the chamber. "I recommend we accept humanity's terms." The council voted. Species by species, the tally accumulated. Many voted against, their pride and fear overwhelming their survival instinct. But more voted in favor. When the final count was announced, the Galactic Council had accepted humanity's terms by a margin of 1,800 to 1,200. The war was over. 1 year later, the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. The tributary accords were gone, replaced by a system of mutual defense and free trade. Hundreds of species that had lived under council oppression for millennia were now free to chart their own course. The council itself had been restructured. Humanity held permanent seats with veto power. The old guard had been swept away, replaced by leaders who understood that the galaxy could no longer be ruled by fear. High Chancellor Vorith had resigned. He spent his remaining years writing a true history of the precursors, holding nothing back. The truth spread across the galaxy, changing everything. Commander Thrall stood trial for his crimes. He was sentenced to spend the rest of his life teaching the history of the species he had helped destroy. 12 civilizations. 12 courses. A curriculum he would never finish. On Earth, Secretary General Maria Santos addressed the United Coalition on the anniversary of the victory. 1 year ago, the galaxy demanded our submission. Today, we stand as equals among the stars. But let us never forget the cost of that equality. She paused, her voice heavy with memory. 80,000 Morgoth died because their leaders chose pride over survival. Millions more suffered in the chaos that followed. We did what we had to do to survive, but we must never celebrate the destruction we caused. She looked out at the crowd. Humanity has always been capable of terrible things. We proved that again this year. But we are also capable of compassion, growth, and choosing a better path. That is what we must do now. Admiral Thomas Webb had retired from active duty. He lived in a small house on Mars, tending a garden and writing letters to the families of those who had served under his command. He never spoke of Terminus, never discussed what it felt like to order the deaths of 80,000 beings. Some burdens were not meant to be shared, but late at night, when the red dust of Mars glittered under the stars, he allowed himself a moment of hope that they had survived. They had done what they had to do. And now, maybe, they could build something better, deep beneath Earth's surface, in a vault known only to a handful of people. Dr. Elena Vasquez checked the Terminus device one last time. The sphere sat silent and dormant, waiting. There were plans to eventually dismantle it, but no one was willing to follow through. Not yet. The galaxy remembered what it could do. Fear kept the peace. She received a message from Ambassador Walker. "Elena, the Arbitration Council is discussing a proposal to ban all strategic weapons above a certain yield. Terminus would be affected. What do you think?" She considered the question for a long time before responding. "Ambassador, the precursors gave us fire. But fire can warm or burn. It is not the tool that matters. It is the hand that wields it." She looked at the dark sphere, the most dangerous weapon ever created. "Humanity has proven we can use Terminus responsibly. We will only use it when there is no other choice. As long as that is true, we should keep it. Not as a threat, but as a guarantee." "A guarantee of what?" Vasquez smiled, tired but genuine. "That no one will ever make us choose between submission and extinction again." She powered down her console and left the vault. The lights dimmed behind her. Terminus waited in the darkness, patient and eternal. And humanity slept peacefully, knowing that whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it on their own terms. The galaxy had demanded tribute. Earth had declared annihilation, and the universe would never be the same.